The suspicious death of a 27-year-old Orlando woman. Sasha Samsudeen's body was found Saturday night inside of her apartment at Uptown Place on North Orange Avenue. Right now, police are not releasing many details, but friends and neighbors say they were stunned to hear about it.
When Sasha was found, she had been fiercely attacked and beaten abominably. The necklace that she had been wearing was broken and it was found tangled in her hair. Then she was strangled also. Her neck was so badly fractured that after an autopsy was done, the medical examiner said that he had never seen such an internal neck fracture as severe as this in his entire career basically. In downtown Orlando, a young woman was found murdered in her bed in her well-secured apartment building just a few hours after she had come home, to catch some sleep after spending some time out with friends. The shocking thing about this was that she lived in a foolproof, top-notch security apartment building that she herself had advertised at some point. So what had happened between the time that she got home and the time that her body was found just a few hours later? The thought of who had done this, how and when were just too terrifying to imagine. But before we dive into this chilling case, hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed yet, and click on that notification as you follow me to Florida to look into the horrifying case of Sasha Samsudeen. Sasha Samsudeen was a 27-year-old gorgeous and educated young lady who grew up in Central Florida. She was born originally in New York in, 1988. And her parents were Ken and Tara Samsudeen, and she had attended and graduated from Seminole High School in 2006. She lived in the ever-happening and bubbly city of sunny Orlando, where she moved to after graduating from University of Florida. So being the smart and intelligent woman that she was, it didn't take her long to find work. She got a job that she loved very, very much. She loved her job. She was working in Orlando at a firm called Pearson and Educational Services. This place is just basically an educational company that, she really enjoyed doing it. For a while, Sasha even worked in the marketing department. Then she began to climb up the ranks until she got to the position of Director of Operations. Her movement up the rank was so fast that it surprised the people she was working with at the time. All this while that they've been working together, a lot of them thought that Sasha was only a pretty face, but with the way she was now growing fast in the company, they knew that they had indeed underestimated her. She was indeed intelligent and a real go-getter. Her co-worker described her as, very warm and an easygoing person. People who knew her described her as very bubbly and outgoing individual who was, the life of the party. This is not the normal cliche where a person passes on and everyone now begins to have something nice to say to them. No, this is not the situation. Sasha was in fact a true reflection of what was seen on camera whenever she was in, online or in front of the television advertising apartment complexes as a part of her volunteer work. She was also a regular volunteer with the Apartment Association of Greater Orlando, and whenever she was in front of that camera, all you can see is beauty and brains with a lot of class. In 2015, Sasha moved into her very own apartment. She had been looking for that perfect one for a while, and when she was asked to promote Uptown Place on North Orange Avenue, she just fell in love with the place. She fell in love with it instantly. So she decided to make it her abode. Uptown Place on North Orange Avenue was, perfect for Sasha because it came with, everything that she wanted. It had a huge gym and a large swimming pool where she could just go and relax whenever she needs to. It also had well-manicured landscape gardens where she could, take a stroll in the evenings. Plus, and most importantly, a state-of-the-art security. So each and every apartment at the Uptown Place was fitted with a quick-set electronic keyless entry digital deadbolt lock. that was, accessible only by its unique code. There was also surveillance cameras all over the buildings, right from the entryway. All entry doors require key fobs to gain entry into the building. A key fob, is just basically this small security hardware device with built-in authentication used to control and secure access to devices, systems, services, network services, and data. It displays a randomly generated access code which changes periodically, usually every 30 to 50 or 60 seconds. Users will first authenticate themselves on the key fob with a personal identification number followed by the current code displayed on the device, to gain access into the apartment building. Or you will just remain outside. If you didn't have one or you misplaced your key fob or you didn't have the authentication code, you will just remain outside basically. So you see, Sasha was so excited that she found in the Upton place that secure place that she would live by herself without any worry. Fast forward to Friday, the 16th of October 2015. It was the last day of Orlando City soccer season, and basically every soccer fan in the city was out to watch the game, and this included Sasha and her group of friends. They all supported, the Orlando City FC, so they were, looking forward to enjoying a night out of celebration if the club won, which they did. So after watching the match together, they all moved themselves to a lounge which was popularly called sidebar. They wanted to celebrate the win. So after having some drinks at sidebar, the night continued as they went to another venue which was a dance club. It was called, I think, the Attic. That's what it was called. It was here that they were until about 12:30 a.m. Then Sasha told her friend Anthony Roper that she wanted to go back home. She wanted to rest. They made plans to, meet up the next morning so they could have breakfast together. Then Sasha walked out through the door with the intentions of basically trekking about 1 mile home, which would have taken her roughly maybe 20 minutes or so. By morning, Anthony was seated at the local cafe where he and Sasha had agreed to meet up so that they could have their breakfast together. The time that they said they should meet came and went, and Sasha did not turn up. Anthony just assumed maybe she was just running late, He waits for a bit and tries to call her on her cell phone, but there was no answer. So he thought to himself, okay, maybe she just still hungover from last night and really needs to sleep it up. So he just eats his breakfast by himself. Now, hours go by and Anthony tries to reach Sasha once again, but her cell phone still wasn't, being answered. It was going unanswered. So he reached out to her other friends just to see if she had checked in with them or if she had caught any of them. These were her two best friends. Their names were Megan and Katie. They told Anthony that they too had been trying to get a hold of Sasha to no avail. The thing was that they had planned their day out. They and Sasha, had a baby shower that they needed to attend on that particular day. So they just didn't understand why Sasha was not picking up her calls or returning them even. It wasn't like typical Sasha, who they knew to be very responsible and on time, If there was any type of change in her plans for the day, Sasha that they knew would have reached out to them to let them know what's up, to tell them, okay, something has come up. So Anthony and the girls decided that they would all go to Sasha's apartment, to check up on her. They just wanted to be sure she was okay and find out why she had gone AWOL since the night before. When they got to the Upton place, they find Sasha's car parked at her space in the parking garage. So immediately there was like a sign of relief. Okay, she's obviously home. When they looked into the car, they could see that the gift that she had bought for the baby shower was right there, neatly wrapped in the back seat of her car. So now they needed to get into her apartment, which was on the 3rd floor. But with all the security protocol of the building, how were they going to do that? They just didn't know what to do. But I'm not sure how they did it, but they were actually very worried about her. So they managed to maneuver their way into the building. I'm thinking that they slipped through the entrance with an actual resident of the building. I don't know how that happened, but they did. So they blended in like they lived there. When they got to Sasha's door, they began to knock. When there was no response, they began to bang the door even harder. They knew that she was in there because her car was parked right at the garage. So she not answering that door put them in a state of panic. There was just this, feeling of dread and the fear of the unknown that kicked in. So right there and then, they began calling everyone that they had in common with Sasha. They just wanted to know if they have heard from her or seen her, but everyone they called said that they had not. They moved to calling the local police station and hospitals to check if anyone of Sasha's description had been arrested or was admitted, but that too was a dead end. At this point, Anthony was like, you know what, it's time to call the cops. So he dialed 911 and explained the situation to the police. The police arrived at the Uptown place by sundown at about, I think, 8 p.m. that night on the 17th of that month. So they wanted to conduct a welfare check on Sasha. The security personnel met with them and they gained entrance into Sasha's apartment through the help of this particular off-duty security guard, a name that was not familiar at the time but now is, but we'll get into that shortly. So this person's name was Stephen Duxbury. So while Sasha's friends were outside waiting, the police entered the apartment and began to look around. When they gained entry into that apartment, at first everything looked normal. It was very clean and arranged and everything was impeccable and neat. And there was even this scent of cleaning products in the air. There was no signs of struggle or forced entry or anything of that sort. Nothing was out of place until an officer walked into one of the bedrooms, the master bedroom to be precise. And he quickly notices that the comforter was placed kind of odd. It was kind of rolled up in a long way, instead of being folded in a rectangle or square like the regular people do. It was rolled up very long, like a tube. As he took a closer look, he could see that there was something rolled up in between the comforter. A closer look would reveal a human hand and strands of black hair sticking out on one end of the tube-like rolled-up comforter. The police quickly unrolled this and there she was, Sasha Samsudeen. She was deceased. She had been fiercely attacked and beaten abominably. The necklace that she was wearing at the time was broken and was found entangled in her hair. Then she was strangled. Her neck was so badly fractured that after an autopsy was done, the medical examiner, Dr. Gary, said that he had never seen such an internal neck fracture as severe as Sasha's in his entire career. The level of devastation and pain Sasha's friend felt at that time when the police officers who had found her had come out to let them know that she was in there quite okay, but she was no longer alive, was indeed, heart-wrenching. It's worthy of note, if it's any relief, for what is what, that Sasha, while being attacked, didn't just lay there and take it. She fought hard, she fought really, really hard for her life. Her hands and her fingers were all scratched up with defensive wounds and abrasions. And when news about what had happened to Sasha began to spread, everyone, her family, her friends, and other residents at Uptown Place were, they were shocked, to say the least. Who would ever want to hurt the ever fun-loving and warm and kind-hearted Sasha?
She was a graduate of Seminole High School in Sanford. Police are asking anyone who was in the area of North Orange Avenue and Mark Street early Saturday morning to please call them.
The last time friends saw Sasha was Friday night. She returned home here to her Uptown Place apartments just before 2 a.m. where she was in the hallway caught by a security camera.
They thought that the perpetrator could have been a resident at the apartment building was even more, terrifying and disturbing.
Typical girl, just nice, fun-loving girl. She wasn't too boastful, too loud. Just nice, quiet type. So she seemed to get along with everybody.
I guess kind of nervous because we don't really know how she was killed or if we should be concerned that there's someone dangerous living in our building.
Following the discovery of her body, Sasha's apartment was turned over to crime scene investigators who noted the absence of her cell phone, her purse, and her key fob. They checked if the door of her apartment was broken, but there was nothing of that sort. Nothing was wrong with it. So this means that Sasha had in fact let her attacker in, meaning someone she knew or was familiar with was responsible for this despicable act. The white pants Sasha was wearing the night before, plus her underwear and her brown purse, were also missing. So no one could find them anywhere. They just didn't see them. Then her blouse and bra had also been ripped off. Investigators also, noticed the strong smell of bleach, like I mentioned earlier, which they now traced to her bed. The attacker, this person who had attacked Sasha, had poured the product on her bed and even on Sasha's body in what investigators think was in an attempt to, get rid of DNA. On her nightstand, the investigators found a thumb print and a condom wrapper that had been left in plain sight on the floor by the bedside. Several prints of a men's size 9 shoes were imprinted on the floors of Sasha's apartment. So the police collected all of this for testing and, for further analysis. Then they moved to her bathroom to check it out. In the bathroom, everything seemed to be okay except that the cabinets where she kept her cleaning supplies were ajar, indicating that the perpetrator or the attacker had purposely tried to clean up like the notice on the bed. The toilet lid was also up, and Sasha was known to be too meticulous and particular to have left the toilet seat up. So they thought that, they would check it out and see if it has been used by someone other than Sasha, since she lived alone. And sure enough, they found 2 thumb prints on the underside of the lid. This was also sent for analysis, including a DNA profile that had been found on Sasha's chest. Then everyone held their breath as they waited on the results of all of the tests to come through, basically. In the meantime, meet 33-year-old Stephen Michael Duxbury. I mentioned him earlier and I said we were going to talk about him, right? This was the same off-duty security guard who had led the cops into Sasha's apartment when they had arrived initially to look for Sasha. So Stephen was a newlywed from Port Orange and he had been working at the Upton apartment for just a little bit over 5 months. He had gotten a job as a security guard because he had passed all the standard FBI background checks that was, conducted on him. Besides, he was also a veteran of the US Air Force. So earlier in the year, probably just a couple of months prior, I think in the month of April or so, he had acquired his security guard license. On the night Sasha was attacked and the life squeezed out of her, he was in fact the security guard on duty. So authorities asked him to come in for an interview. Perhaps he had, seen or noticed something that would be of value to the investigations. He told the police that Sasha had arrived at the entrance of the Uptown place at about 1:45 a.m. the morning of the incident with 2 other women without her ID and, her key fob. She was obviously inebriated, so the 2 women who came with her were exceptionally concerned about her well-being. They wanted Sasha to get into the building safe and sound before they left. He told them that, as standard procedure, he wasn't allowed to let anyone who didn't have any form of identification or proof that they were a resident of the building into the building. So while they were still on it, a male resident arrived at the entrance and he seemed to know Sasha as an occupant of that building. So Sasha slid in with him when he used his key fob. So the 2 girls who had brought her then left, now seeing that she was now okay. Knowing that Sasha was intoxicated and might have been wandering about inside the building, he then began to search for her to make sure she really got into her own apartment. Stephen Duxbury told authorities that he searched several floors before locating Sasha outside her own apartment. At the time, she was attempting to put in her secret code into the digital keypad, but all her attempts were failing. Sasha then asked him to please walk with her to the garage, to her car, to see if her, her key fob was inside her car. He didn't want to spend all of his time babysitting a drunk, but he needed for her to get inside her apartment. So he agreed to go with her to the parking garage. But before they would reach her car, she suddenly remembered the code once again. So they now had to, go back again. He said he shouldn't have, but he told her that he would leave her by herself to punch in the code while he went on a security round of the building. If by the time he gets back, she still hasn't been able to get into the apartment with the right code, they will have to, come up with something else, figure out an alternative way to deal with the situation. He went on to do the routine check of the entire floors of the building. Then by the time he returns, Sasha was no longer at her door. So he thought that, okay, she was at least able to figure out the right code after all. So he left. But later that morning, just a few hours later, he said that he saw Sasha again. She had walked past him in the hallway with a man that he didn't recognize as a resident. He then said that his shift ended at about 6 a.m. but he lingered around to write his report for the night, then he went home. Having told the police all of this, the police wanted to check out these accounts of events. They wanted to know more about Sasha's movement that night. Maybe it will help them to know how this had happened. Plus, who was the unknown man that Stephen Duxbury had seen with Sasha in the hallway? So they began to collect CCTV footage from all the cameras that lined the way right from Attic, that's Attic, the club where Sasha had been that night. It wasn't a long distance from her apartment building, just like about a mile or so, like I said earlier. And on one of these CCTV footages taken from the street outside the Attic club, it shows Sasha alone and walking unsteadily through numerous people that were out and about. The police, kept combing the CCTV footages for Sasha. It was a really busy night and it was hard picking her out, but in the next footage, Sasha was seen with two women whom no one knew at the time. The police now showed the footage to Sasha's close friends and family, and no one seemed to, recognize who these women who were with Sasha were. So the police released the footage and made a public appeal for the unidentified people, that's the two women, to come forward. And the reward of $5,000 was also announced for anyone with useful information on what had happened to Sasha. This actually worked, as within hours of that appeal, two women who were called Julia Goff and Haley Mesmo contacted the police to say that they were the ones on the CCTV footage with Sasha that night. They were brought in for an interview and they told the police that while waiting for their Uber, they had noticed Sasha inebriated and about to get into a car with a group of men that had just pulled up. They saw her when she came, so they knew that she didn't know this man. So they got involved and told the men to let her be, as they were concerned for her safety. As the women tried to help her and get her to call someone to come get her, they quickly realized that she didn't have her cell phone on her. Her cell phone was not in her purse, which she had on her. Her ID card also was not in there, so they didn't know exactly what to do. What they could come up with at the time was to get her to her home safely. So they now invited Sasha to share their Uber so that they could, at least drop her off at her apartment. When they arrived at the Uptown place, they waited for Sasha to get into the building before they left, but she tried and could not because a security guard had approached and denied Sasha entry without proof of residence. She didn't have the clearance that she needed, so she was stuck outside with them. She was just standing there and they didn't want to leave her by herself, alone, knowing that she was inebriated. But when another tenant arrived home, Sasha slipped through the door behind him, and that was the last time that they saw Sasha. So basically, everything this woman had said corresponds with what the security guard Stephen Duxbury had told the police. So now, it was now time for the police, to find out. It was their mission to find out what then had really happened after that. Since Sasha had received a severe beating and had been manually strangled, the attack on her seemed to be personal, It seemed to be like a crime of passion. So they really wanted to find out who that man was that Stephen said he saw with her. Was it someone that she was dating at the time or what? They began to track down and interview every man who had been involved with her at any point in her life, basically. So they invited and spoke to her ex, Taylor Onsinger. Taylor and Sasha had dated from, I think, 2013 through 2015 before they broke up. He told the police that even though they were no longer together, they spoke to each other frequently and on a regular basis, including that morning. And he was hoping that someday, somehow they could, work things out and get back together again. Taylor had a strong alibi for the night of the attack on Sasha. He was at his job working as a bartender at a bar that was like about 1 mile away from the Uptown place, after which he now got home at about 1 a.m. His parents had been staying with him at the time, so they were able to corroborate his story. He was also able to provide his DNA to police for comparison, and when it wasn't a match, the police ruled him out as a potential person of interest. But talking to Taylor was useful, as the police were able to get the password to Sasha's iPad from Taylor. He knew the password to Sasha's iPad when they were still in a relationship, and since the iPad was still in her apartment after the attack, they thought that maybe she still maintained the same password. They tried it and it actually worked. It shared the same iCloud account and data as her iPhone. Mind you, her iPhone was missing, so they were able to see her phone messages. At about 12 minutes past 5 a.m., Sasha had sent a text message to someone called Ben, with whom she had been communicating with for some time, and their communication was kind of frequent, But Ben did not reply immediately. He didn't respond. He responded like 16 minutes later, but Sasha never responded. And that was the last time that Sasha tried to actually talk to anyone in her life. This person, Benjamin Roebuck, she had tried to contact, was already known to the police. He had come in as soon as news had spread that Sasha, had been found deceased. He told the police in an interview that he knew Sasha since high school and there had been an item during their years in college. They had actually broken up their relationship, but they still maintained a very close friendship. He said that he received a message from Sasha at about 12 minutes past 5 a.m. on that morning of her demise, that the message was just his name, Ben, B-E-N, Ben. He wasn't by the phone when the message came in, so about 16 minutes later, he responded but never heard back from her. He felt very guilty after learning of what had happened to Sasha, because he believed that maybe that last message was, her trying to get help. The police looked into Ben, and he also had a strong alibi, plus his DNA too wasn't a match, so he obviously was eliminated as a person of interest as well. The police turned to the off-site security company that were in charge of the security footage from Sasha's apartment building. Now, after obtaining the footage, they went through it frame by frame, and what they discovered on that footage would send spine-chilling fear through every resident of Uptown Place and blow the case beyond national headlines. When this case happened, I remember watching and reading about it in my country, and I couldn't just shake that thought that we're not really safe when we think we are. If this could happen to Sasha in this kind of secure apartment building, then are we really safe? In this footage, Sasha is seen entering Uptown Place at about 1:46 a.m. Then we can clearly hear her speak to a male. He asks her if she was alright, to which she replies with a very cheery, "Yes, thank you," and the man says, "No problem." She then walks up the stairs, and for the next 20 minutes, she's out of view of any camera, so she can't be seen. This was the time that she was able to get into the apartment with the help of the unknown resident that had just spoken to her. By 1:48 a.m., Stephen Duxbury comes in looking for Sasha. By this time, the camera again picks her going up another flight of stairs. At about 6 minutes past 2 a.m., she has again been picked up on another camera as she runs up the stairs, probably, trying to get away from Stephen, whom she thinks at this point is coming after her to throw her out, since she, didn't use her key fob, since she's pleading with another resident, basically. Then we see Stephen Duxbury following Sasha at about 25 minutes past 2 a.m. Sasha is again seen on camera coming down the stairs with Stephen Duxbury towards the first floor parking garage, and they are actually, having a conversation. I think this is the point when she asks him to accompany her to her car. They exit the building before reappearing again moments later at about 27 minutes past 2 a.m. Then they take the stairs up to the third floor garage as Sasha kept bumping into the walls, obviously intoxicated. Then they re-emerge again when Sasha suddenly remembers the code. The thing was, This was the very last time Sasha was seen on any cameras on site. So what happened to the whole story of, Sasha passing by Stephen Duxbury later on? That footage was nowhere to be found, or did that incident even happen at all? Fast forward to 5 minutes past 5 a.m. Stephen Duxbury is seen on surveillance cameras entering the top floor parking garage. Then he re-enters at exactly 30 minutes past 5 a.m. By 6:36 a.m., Stephen Duxbury is again captured on camera entering the second floor parking garage where his personal vehicle was parked. He was carrying 3 white trash bags. Shortly after, about 2 minutes later, he re-enters the building again by 6:38 a.m. By 6:40 a.m., he is seen leaving the building with his shoulder bag and personal belongings. Now, the timestamp of Stephen Duxbury leaving the building did not match when he was supposed to have left. He had told the police earlier on in the interview that his shift ended at about 6 a.m. but he had lingered around to write the report. So, what was he doing at the building for that extra 40 minutes or so? A report should not have taken that long to write, right? And that more than 1 hour long interview between 5:14 a.m. and 6:36 a.m. that cameras could not find Stephen Duxbury was something worthy of checking out. Where was he that he couldn't be seen? There was no recorded key fob activity at that time. So what exactly has Stephen Duxbury been doing? The police asked the property building manager if taking out the trash was usually part of a security guard's duties, because clearly Stephen Duxbury had been seen on camera taking out the trash, but from what apartment did he take that trash from? Stephen didn't have an apartment there, and the management basically said that no, Stephen wasn't supposed to take out any trash. The police brought Stephen Duxbury in for another questioning about the trash bag he was seen taken out of the building. And Stephen told authorities that he had seen them on the second floor after his shift, so he decided to help out the cleaners to take them out. This time around, the police noticed that there were scratch marks that were all over Stephen's arms, with one that looked like even a potential bite mark. The police questioned him about it, and Stephen Duxbury said that he had a medical condition that caused him skin irritations. Guys, that bite mark didn't look anything like a skin irritation. They look more like they were made by Sasha in an attempt to fight off her attacker and save her own life. The police then asked Stephen Duxbury to come in for a polygraph test, which he did, but before the administrator could, administer the polygraph, the examiner asked Stephen if he had ever been arrested. It was then that Stephen said that he had been arrested when he was a juvenile, but it was just all a misunderstanding. Here is what he said.
Basically, it was just my best friend's older sister was babysitting my siblings because they wouldn't listen to me. My mother was a single mother raising 4 kids. We lived in a farm, and this is when I lived in West Massachusetts. Kid that lived down the road kept sneaking over to our farm and opening all the doors, letting our animals out in the middle of the night. We lived on a major highway. I had to take the dogs out to the barn. She came with me to help me because I had a golden retriever and another dog. And while we were out there, I had forgotten to plug in the cord that gave power to the barn in the house, so it was pitch black, and I thought I heard something upstairs. And I thought, oh God, shit's upstairs. So, not really thinking, I went over to the wall of tools, and I grabbed the first thing that seemed sense to me, which was a shovel head that had broken off the staff. Mm-hmm. I go up the stairs, and she's following me. She was about a year or 2 older than I was, and, she's kind of a little nervous with what's going on, so I'm like, okay, stay here at the top of the stairs. If anyone tries to run by you, stop them. She's like, okay. So I go walking around, but I can barely see anything. I'm walking, I hear floorboards creak, I see a shadow move out of the corner of my eye, turn around, upside the back of her head. Oh, she had moved and followed me. I didn't know. Okay, that's a simple mistake. Yeah, well, that simple mistake unfortunately went right down the worst roads possible. She freaks out, and I find out later that's because she had been raped by her 3 previous boyfriends and her uncle. So see, she had some severe issues with that. Mm-hmm. Her mother hated my mother because her kids felt more comfortable talking to my mother than her. So she forced Becky to press charges against me. State troopers in the area basically assumed I was trying to rape her or something. And then it just went from there.
That was what Stephen Duxbury told the polygraph examiner, right? But the true story was that Stephen had a crush on his best friend's older sister, so he didn't know what to do with it. What he did was that he hit her over the head with a shovel while she was, at their home babysitting him and his siblings, and she toppled over and lost consciousness. But when she came to, she realizes that Stephen is on top of her, trying to choke and kiss her at the same time. When he sees that she was awake, he runs away, but the police, apprehended him later, and he was charged and convicted of aggravated assault. Stephen goes on a long rant about his medical history to the polygraph examiner, as well as the difficulties of him being a security guard and all of that. Here is what he said again.
Tracking her from downtown, where she's trying to pick up guys.
Mm-hmm.
So,
She wasn't flirting with me. I mean, other than, leaning against me in the hallway because she could barely stand. But she wasn't flirting with me.
She never flirted with you?
No.
She never asked you to come inside the apartment?
No. If she had asked me to come inside the apartment, I would have told her no.
But this is the problem, according to what I'm looking at.
I don't know. But I've been asked by other residents in the past, too, to come into their apartments. And I've also told them no. I had one offer me sexual favors, and I declined. The only person who knows that other than me is my supervisor. Because we didn't want to embarrass the resident because he was drunk at the time. Or possibly just lonely and maybe tipsy, I don't know. I take my job seriously, and when my job says I'm not allowed to go into someone's apartment, I don't go into someone's apartment. Yes, I've been bothered by this since the moment I saw and heard about the situation. It's been bothering me. I've been having a hard time sleeping because of this. I've been terrified of what's going to happen when I go to work tonight because I know I'm going to be having residents asking me questions. I might even have newspaper people trying to corner me. Now, this whole thing is bothering me. And I knew this was going to end up happening because this is not the first time I've had police officers assume I did the worst thing.
Okay. I'm not trying to get you to say anything that didn't happen. I'm just telling you the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? You didn't want to hurt her.
I didn't hurt.
Stephen, can we at least agree that you did go inside? Now, you may not have hurt her.
I did not go inside of her apartment.
There's a lot of physical evidence, even after she invited you in.
She didn't invite me into her apartment. And if we're going to continue on this line of discussion, I think we're...
So basically, Stephen was trying to, portray himself as a straight-up, disciplined individual who was very strict when it comes to, keeping the rules and regulations and being an abiding citizen. But that was not what the residents of the Uptown place were saying. There had, in fact, been so many complaints about Stephen since he began working there only 5 months prior. A female resident had laid a formal complaint to Vital Security and Investigations, that's the company that Stephen worked for, and Uptown Place and Condominium Consent, that Stephen had followed her to her apartment one time and he had, creeped her out with his behavior. Others have said that he outrightly harassed them and made them, feel unsafe and uncomfortable. Basically, as a security guard, he used his access to, prey on people whom he thought were vulnerable. But the people responsible did not do anything about this report. They just heard them and ignored them.
Based on this, there's something going on here. Okay? And so maybe she somehow talked you into coming in. Well, the chart's saying that you did, this is huge. And this is, did you enter her apartment? No, I didn't. All right, well, I mean, the only thing, honestly, the situation is bothering. I mean, about the whole thing about her. I mean, I'll be straight up. This whole situation has been bothering me. Just thinking about what may have happened.
Well,
without even being a polygraph examiner, you were able to show me each question you had issue with. And every single one of them, on every single chart, was a relevant question. So that means there's something there. There's something that you're not telling the complete truth about. You have no control over that. That's why this works so well. Now, let me show you another thing. One more thing.
what's that say?
Significant reactions. Probably this result was produced by a truthful person.
0.003% chance.
Now, during the polygraph examination, Stephen was questioned if he had ever set foot inside Sasha's apartment. He said no. If he had, caused her death, he answered no again. if he had ever removed anything from Sasha's apartment, and his answer again was no. When the results were shown, it indicated that Stephen was telling a lie in all of these questions. The examiner had also asked Stephen one very crucial question. He asked if he knew how Sasha had died. There was an array of options for him to pick out of, and when it came to was she choked, his response indicated extreme levels of deceptions. Why did he react that way to the question when, at the time, the police had not even told the public how Sasha had been murdered? The police, after the examination, asked Stephen if he could, hand over the shoes that he wore the night of the incident. He gave them the shoes, but the shoes were not a match to the imprint that were found on Sasha's floor. So the police obtained a search warrant to search Stephen's apartment on October the 23rd, and there they found a pair of size 9 Skechers sneakers that matched the shoe print on the floor of Sasha's apartment. By this time, the result of the thumb prints that were found under the toilet seat in Sasha's bathroom was also out, and it was also a perfect match to Stephen Duxbury's right thumb print. Everything was at this point pointing to Stephen Duxbury. Even the trash bag he was seen taken out of the building matched those that Sasha used in her apartment. Then the DNA that was found on Sasha's chest also came out as a match to Stephen Duxbury's DNA. So now the police had their man, right? He was formally arrested at about 10:30 a.m. in Volusia County one Friday morning by U.S. Marshals.
October 17th, Sasha Samsudeen was found murdered in her apartment. Today, our detectives have arrested Stephen Duxbury, the security guard from Uptown Apartments, in connection with this case. Stephen Duxbury is charged with first-degree murder, sexual battery, and burglary to an occupied dwelling. As a security guard, he used his access to prey on someone who was very vulnerable. Our hearts go out to Sasha's family. Our thoughts and prayers are with them, and we hope that this will bring a little bit of closure or start the process of closure for this family.
But one thing that the police hadn't figured out yet was how did Stephen get into Sasha's apartment in the first place? They searched his phone and they found out that between the hours of 4:54 a.m. and 1 minute past 5 a.m., this horrible man was searching on Google how to override a quick-set digital lock. Remember, I had earlier mentioned that this was the type of lock used in the apartment building. So he was basically searching how he was going to override it and get into Sasha's apartment. See him here entering the third floor parking garage shortly after this and re-entering at about 5:13 a.m. Remember, just a second earlier at about 5:12 a.m., Sasha had sent Ben a message to which there was no response. The message was just his name, B-E-N, Ben. Did she want to write more but was interrupted by someone entering her apartment? You can imagine the horror Sasha would have felt, when she suddenly realizes that in that very second, in her secure building, the door of her apartment had been opened and Stephen Duxbury was, standing in the middle of her apartment. The police believe that Stephen managed to override that security lock at about 30 minutes past 5 a.m. and then entered Sasha's apartment as she lay in bed. Then he attacks her, beat her savagely, assaulted her before he put his hands around her neck and squeezed the life out of her, fracturing the neck in the process. Then he proceeded to clean up forensic evidence with bleach before removing what he could in trash bags. These trash bags were the one that he was seen taking to his car in the parking garage, and he then disposed of them later on. When the news spread that Stephen Duxbury was the one who had done this to Sasha, her family put the blame on Vital Security and Investigations. That's the security company that employed Stephen Duxbury in the first place. Even though he had a criminal past, they knew and they still employed him. They had also turned deaf ears to complaints made by other residents. In their defense, Vital Security said that Stephen Duxbury had passed the FBI background check that they had done. The family proceeded to sue the company that makes the quick-set digital security lock because it wasn't secure enough and it was also easy to override, which was not something that had happened only to Sasha. Other people too had complained that the lock was very easy to override. The company did say that maybe that particular set on Sasha's door was faulty, but they still took responsibility and changed the design of the digital lock to what is presently used now.
Away from the start of a murder trial for a former security guard accused of killing a young woman. Jury selection starts tomorrow in Stephen Duxbury's trial. Channel 9's Sierra Pubman is live outside the courthouse. And Sierra, the defense was given a blow when a judge said key pieces of evidence would not be thrown out.
And that evidence is going to be in. It includes some shoes that were found at the defendant's house, as well as some statements he made during a polygraph test. And earlier today, I was talking to our legal analyst, and he explains just how big of a deal this is.
Stephen Duxbury was charged and arraigned in court, and following a trial that lasted for 7 days only, he was handed a life sentence without the possibility of parole and an additional 15 years for burglary, after the jury had deliberated for only 4 hours in 2019. Stephen tried to appeal his sentence, but his motion was denied. He would live out his natural life behind bars, thank goodness. Meanwhile, Sasha had been laid to rest on October the 20th at the Mixed Faith service in Orlando, in a private service that blended Hindu, Islamic, and Christian practices. In the wake of what happened to Sasha, Pearson, the company she worked for, released a statement, quote, "Everyone at Pearson continues to keep Sasha's loved ones in their thoughts and in their hearts during this very difficult time. Sasha was a highly respected member of Pearson family, and her colleagues missed her presence greatly," end quote. The Apartment Association of Greater Orlando, where Sasha volunteered, also put out a statement a few days after she had passed. They said, quote, "Our association family was saddened to hear of the untimely passing of Sasha Samsudeen this weekend. Sasha was one of a kind, a tireless volunteer, and an awesomely infectious personality you couldn't help but admire. Our thoughts and prayers are with Sasha's family and friends during this difficult time. We will miss you, Sasha," end quote. This case serves as a reminder that even with the most sophisticated locks on our doors and CCTV cameras all around, we still might not, be truly safe as the world continues to become a more dangerous and dangerous place. Who would have ever thought that a security guard who is supposed to protect is responsible for taking the life of a young woman in such a horrifying manner? Sasha was a good girl who did the right things. She thought that she was, making the right choice by picking up Uptown Place as her residence because of how secure and high-end it was. Now see how it all ended. Tara, Sasha's mother, and her father, Ken, spoke at Central Florida's 12th Annual Day of Remembrance for Murder Victims in 2018. Sasha, a group called Bereaved Survivors of Homicide. It's an organization in Central Florida bringing together people who have lost loved ones to murder. Her brother Kenny, in 2021, after many years of grieving, organized a hike through the Appalachian Trail in honor of Sasha. With that, we have come to the end of Sasha Samsudeen's case. Let me know what your thoughts are about this case in the comments. Then kindly give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you are yet to. Thank you for watching to the very end. Until next video, stay safe.